This is the getting started video. We have here our plastic palette that is closable, and it is when you open it, it has wells in both sides, down this end, down this end. We have our paints, and this is Quinacridone Pink by Daniel Smith. What you do is just fill up the well like that. Do that with each color. I'm going to do my Quinacridone red. You might not have all of these colors. So it's for whatever form your student is in, you will have those colors. And you will fill up. Let me see how much I put in there. It's nice and juicy. And then I'm going to put my phthalo. So this is phthalo blue. If you notice, it also says cobalt blue on it, but it's a phthalo blue. Phthalo is most primary, and this is by Lucas. It's a different brand than what was recommended, but it was less expensive at my art store, and it's the same color. So I'm going to skip a couple of wells, and I'm going to put the blue in here. I'm going to do the same thing with my Prussian blue. And I'm going to let it dry. And then I have two yellows. I have Quinacridone Gold. And I have Hansa Yellow. You notice Daniel Smith, and this one is Winsor Newton. So if you are using different brand names, it does not matter. Okay, so there is my palette. That's the first thing I do before I ever need to get started. You have to set up your palette, and then you have to let this dry. It usually takes a day, maybe 2 days, depending on how wet your liquids are. And then once it dries, you can use it. It becomes very much like this palette that is already hard. These are in little cakes. They're already hard, and they're ready to go just by adding water. So because I'm going to go ahead and get started with lesson 1, I'm going to spray. I just have a cheap spray bottle. It always seems to be closed when I need it to not be. And I'm just going to spray my palette down. It's just that simple. All of it, doesn't matter how wet it is. And then I have my water. Always have a paper towel handy. And have your paintbrushes. I'm going to go for a number 6. This is a number 6 in a best, and you see it's a round right there. Then we have the Emerald Kalinsky. This is number 8. Actually, let me find a number 6. Number 6. And it's also a round. I wanted to point out the tips to you. The difference in quality. The difference in tips. One might be easier to use if you notice the one on the left is cut by the company that makes it so that it stays truly round, and the one on the right is a traditional round where you have to reshape it when it's wet so that it becomes round the way that you want it to. They're roughly the same size. So here are the bristles. Here is the barrel. And then the handle here. And you'll notice that the one on the right, the Emerald Kolinsky, has the piece that you hold on to. It's kind of like a pencil grip. If you're teaching your student how to properly grip, that one might be helpful. And then the best is just traditional rounded handle. They're roughly the same size. Roughly the size of a pencil. Makes it easier for your students to hold. I'm going to use best this one. So we want to talk about loading our brush with paint. Okay, so right now my brush is dry. I'm going to wet it. We're not doing dry brush. It's important that you remember that this is brush drawing, not dry brushing, but brush drawing. Dry brushing is actually a technique that watercolorists use to make things look a certain way. So this is brush drawing. I have loaded my brush with water. Very difficult to see. I'm going to let some of that water go, but I need, and you can see, if I can find the camera again, that the bristles come to a very nice point once it's wet. And you saw how it was before when it was dry. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to use blue, and the paint is all wet. You can see how nicely loaded the brush is with paint. It's not goopy, but you can see the color of it. For some reason right now the light is not helping me. Let me see. My brush is saturated with paint, and so my colors are coming out nice and bold. And that's what you want them to look like. You want enough paint on your brush to make it seem like it's ink. And it's fluid, it flows well. Now, if you have a lot of water on your brush, and so that your brush is dripping with water, and you dip it in your paint, and it's dripping, let's see what that looks like. Okay, you can probably tell the difference in the paint. And when it dries, one is going to be much more intense than the other. This one is going to dry and it's going to be lighter. This one's drying already and it's staying the same as when I painted it. This one is going to be lighter. Now some people like to really wet down their paint. For the sake of speed, I'm going to do it like this. So if I had a whole lot of water and I have a whole lot of water, notice how wet you notice that I am not allowing my bristles to splay. If I were to continue to use my brush until I used all the wetness out of it, you would notice that my bristles start to splay. This is a very high quality brush, so it's going to be difficult to make it do that. That is the benefit of using a high quality brush. These are also high quality brushes, the Kolinskys, and I love them. They're some of my favorites. You can see when